The last stand. The old man can't sit here. The young manager's voice cut through the crowded restaurant like a blade, cold, final, unforgiving. The elderly man at the corner table didn't move. His hands trembled slightly as they rested on the worn wooden surface. He wore a faded green jacket, and on his chest, right above his heart, a small bronze pin caught the dim light. The restaurant fell into an uncomfortable silence. Some customers looked away, others whispered behind their hands. A few pulled out their phones, sensing something was about to happen. But the old man just sat there, not with defiance, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by cruelty. The manager stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the tile floor. "This is a family establishment," he said louder now, making sure everyone could hear. "We don't allow vagrants or your type here." The old man's eyes, pale blue and weathered by decades, slowly lifted to meet the manager's gaze. He didn't speak. He simply looked, and in that look was the weight of years, of battles fought, of brothers lost, of a lifetime spent serving something greater than himself. Then, from across the restaurant, a chair scraped against the floor. A man in his 50s stood up, still wearing his police uniform from the evening shift. His badge glinted under the fluorescent lights as he walked toward their table. Behind him, another man rose, this one in a firefighter's jacket, still smelling of smoke from the call he'd just finished. "Is there a problem here?" the police officer asked, his voice steady but with an edge that suggested he already knew the answer. The manager, suddenly less confident, straightened his tie. "This is a private establishment. I have the right to refuse service." "To who?" the firefighter asked, stepping beside his colleague. "To a veteran?" For the first time, people began to really look at the old man. The bronze pin on his chest wasn't just any pin. It was a Purple Heart, awarded to those wounded in combat while serving their country. Most had never seen one in person, but there was something unmistakable about its quiet dignity. The manager's face flushed red. "I don't care what he is. He hasn't ordered anything in an hour. He's taking up space that paying customers could use." The old man finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying clearly through the now silent restaurant. "I ordered coffee," he said simply. "It's getting cold." A waitress, young and obviously uncomfortable, hurried over with a fresh cup. Her hand shook as she set it down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know you were waiting." But the manager wasn't finished. "Look at him," he said, gesturing dismissively. "This isn't the place for people like that. We have standards." That's when a voice cut through the tension. "What kind of standards?" In the doorway stood a woman in her 70s, elegant despite her age, wearing a simple blue dress with a small gold star pinned to her collar. "I asked you a question," she continued. "What kind of standards does your establishment have?" The manager fumbled for words. "We serve quality food to quality people." The woman nodded. "Quality people? And you've determined that this gentleman doesn't qualify?" She gestured toward the old man, who was now holding his coffee cup with both hands, as if drawing warmth from it. "Do you know who this is?" The manager shifted uncomfortably. "I don't care who he is." "His name is Thomas Mitchell," the woman said, her voice growing stronger. "Sergeant Thomas Mitchell, United States Marine Corps. He served 3 tours in Vietnam. He was wounded twice, the second time pulling 4 men from a burning helicopter under enemy fire." The restaurant had become completely quiet. Even the kitchen sounds had stopped. The woman continued, her eyes never leaving the manager's face. "The Purple Heart on his chest? He earned that at Da Nang in 1968. He was 19 years old when shrapnel from a mortar round tore through his leg. He could have gone home then. Instead, he volunteered for a second tour." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "After the war, he came home to protests and spit. No parades, no thank yous, no heroes welcome. He worked 40 years as a mechanic, raised 3 children, and buried a wife he loved more than life itself." The manager's face had gone pale. Around the restaurant, people were standing up, not to leave but to listen. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked angry, but not at the old man. 6 months ago, the woman continued, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Some days are better than others. Today, he forgot to bring his wallet. But he remembered this place because he and his wife used to come here every Friday night for 30 years. She reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill, placing it on the table next to the old man's coffee. "For his meal," she said simply. The manager opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He stood there frozen as the reality of what he had done began to sink in. That's when Thomas Mitchell, the old Marine, slowly stood up. His movements were careful, deliberate, the actions of a man whose body had carried him through more than most could imagine. He looked at the manager, not with anger but with something that might have been pity. "I've been called worse things by better men," he said quietly, "but never in the country I bled for." He picked up the $20 bill and handed it back to the woman. "Keep your money, ma'am. I'm not hungry anymore." As he walked toward the door, something extraordinary happened. One by one, every customer in the restaurant stood up. The police officer, the firefighter, families with children, elderly couples, young people on dates. All of them rose in silence as the old Marine passed by. It wasn't planned. It wasn't organized. It was just the spontaneous recognition of something that transcended politics, transcended generations, transcended everything except the simple acknowledgement of service and sacrifice. Thomas Mitchell paused at the door and looked back one last time. His eyes found the manager, who was now standing alone in a room full of people who had turned their backs on him. "I hope you never have to learn what I learned," the old man said, "but if you do, I hope someone shows you more respect than you showed me tonight." Then he was gone, walking out into the night with the same quiet dignity he had carried his entire life. The woman in the blue dress was the last to leave. Before she walked out, she turned to the manager one final time. "That gold star on my collar," she said. "It means I'm a gold star mother. I lost my son in Afghanistan in 2009. He was 22 years old." She paused at the door. "Men like Thomas Mitchell, men like my son, they didn't fight for a building or a business or a flag. They fought for the idea that in America, every person deserves dignity, every person deserves respect." Her voice broke slightly. "Tonight you forgot what country you live in." The restaurant emptied quickly after that. Word spread through social media faster than wildfire. By morning, the story had gone viral. Videos taken by customers showed the moment Thomas Mitchell was asked to leave, and the moment an entire restaurant stood up for him. The restaurant's corporate office received thousands of calls. Protest reviews flooded their online pages. Veterans organizations called for boycotts. Local news stations picked up the story, then national ones. The young manager was fired within 48 hours. The restaurant issued a public apology and announced that all veterans would eat free on Veterans Day. But for many people it was too little, too late. Thomas Mitchell never saw the news coverage. His Alzheimer's had taken that ability from him. But on quiet days, when his mind was clear, he would sit in his chair by the window and remember the night when strangers became family, and a room full of people reminded him that his service had not been forgotten. The woman in the blue dress visited him regularly after that night. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she had lost more than just her son to war. She had lost her faith in her fellow Americans. But that night in the restaurant, watching ordinary people do extraordinary things, she found it again. Sometimes heroism isn't about charging into battle or making grand gestures. Sometimes it's about standing up when others sit down. Sometimes it's about remembering that the person next to you might have given everything for the right to sit at that table, in that restaurant, in that country. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand up and remind the world what honor looks like. Thomas Mitchell passed away peacefully 6 months later, surrounded by family and friends who made sure he knew he was loved. At his funeral, the restaurant where he had been humiliated sent flowers. The card read, "Thank you for your service. We will never forget." But Margaret Chen, the Gold Star mother, had the last word. At the memorial service, she stood before a crowd of hundreds and said simply, "He taught us that dignity can't be taken away. It can only be given up." And Thomas Mitchell never gave his up, not once, not ever. The story lives on, shared in military forums, in schools, and families around dinner tables, a reminder that respect is earned through service and honor is proven through sacrifice. And sometimes, when the world forgets what these things mean, it takes an old Marine and a room full of strangers to remind us all over again.